Hello BookTube, my name is Chloe and I am here just to make a video about the Christine Riccio Again But Better book tour.
The first time I ever got an opportunity to do this, I was covering the Vampire Academy premiere red carpet back in 2014. And Holland Roden was there from Teen Wolf. Yeah, and I wasn't expecting it. But basically, the central theme is more family oriented, whereas this central theme is more like finding yourself and first love. It's a little darker and more intense, but there will still be romance because I love me a romance. Like, I love a romance. But the fun thing is that there are going to be two point of views, so you get to travel with two different characters and they both have different romantic stuff.
More to discuss. Birds don't sing, they just fall from the sky. Girls don't call and they never tell you why. That's just how they say goodbye.
Alright, so I just got back from Naperville, Illinois, and I'm now back in my apartment, and I had a really great time. I went to the event with my mom. We went to this one French restaurant that was so good, the nicest server I have ever met in my entire life, and it was just like really fun. So the event was held in a church, like a non-denominational type church with like the big campus and building. But it was hosted by Anderson's Bookshop, which is, I think if you live in the Chicago area, you probably have heard of this bookstore. A lot of people kind of seem to know about it. And I picked up something that I have been so excited about, and I picked up The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Everybody basically knows what this book is about, but it's a reclusive Hollywood star who tells her story to a reporter, and this book is that story, and everybody is loving this book. It's not something that I would normally pick up, but a lot of reviewers and booktubers that I trust have been just absolutely raving about it, so I figured it was a good one to check out, and I'm really excited to pick this up right after I get done with Christine's book. If you've been watching Christine for any amount of time, you know that she's obsessed with what books look like naked, and hers is so pretty. It's got this little engraved, or not engraved, but it's got a watermelon on it, and it looks really good naked. So then of course I also got it signed by Christine, just says Chloe XOXO, little heart, and then it's signed by Christine Riccio. So it was really lovely to meet Christine. She had so many people there at this event. I was watching her be really engaging and like lively with every person she was talking to, and I was just really like proud and like surprised that she had so much energy. And I thought it was really cool, you know? People want to read her book because we know her as the person that she is. But yeah, those are the things I picked up in Naperville. It was such a lovely little city, and I am going to get on to reading Again But Better now, and I'm kind of terrified, kind of really excited, because I really want to like it, but I've heard some things that have made me unsure about how I'm going to feel about it, so I'm just excited to experience it, and Christine deserves the props for doing the thing, so here we go. I just read the first chapter of Christine's book, and I just want to say that I'm already in love with her writing style. I did not realize that I was gonna like it so much. I've heard people talk about how good she like really is at writing, but I like didn't really realize how engaging her style actually is until like I just opened it up and like read a little bit of it. So I am on chapter 17 now, and I just wanted to do a little update because I just read something really funny. This is a spoiler, not like a spoiler, no, this is for sure a spoiler. It's I think it's a reference, it must be a reference to Twilight or an allusion to Twilight, because there's a list here in Shane's journal at the beginning of chapter 17 that says, things I'm pretty sure about. 1, it's time to leave for the train back to London. 2, Pilot and I have almost kissed multiple times now. And 3, Pilot has a girlfriend. I just think that it's really funny. I appreciate these little quirks about the book. As far as the girlfriend situation goes, this is something that I know some people are not super happy about, plot-wise, because Pilot says he has a girlfriend, but it kind of paints this picture like he's into Shane and he's like hitting on her and that kind of stuff. And one YouTuber I watched, I can't remember who it was exactly, if I find it I'll link her down below, but she specifically said like it just kind of promotes that girl against girl vibe that's just really not healthy. You know, girls shouldn't be constantly in competition, we shouldn't be trying to drag other girls down, and like that's a totally valid point. But for right now, how I feel about this is I'm not as much offended by it because I've seen these situations happen so much. It might not be morally right and it might not have been the best way to go with the plot, but I do think that it's so realistic and it happens, and things are confusing, especially when you're young, when you're in college, when you're, you know, in different areas away from your people. And tentative relationships like the one pilot is describing with his girlfriend at home really do happen. So I think that for right now it's not really bothering me necessarily. I'm not sure how it's gonna go, if this other girl is ever gonna be brought in as a character or not, but as of right now, it happens, you know, and that's kind of my attitude towards it, so we'll see how it goes. But I just thought that little Twilight reference was hilarious. So I have just finished Again But Better, and I have some thoughts. Wow, there's just so much. I loved all of the young adult references. I was told once in a creative writing class, I made a couple references to like music or something from like the early 2000s, and my writing professor told me maybe to pull some of those references out because it dates your story. But I loved the way and a lot of times in young adult books, those kinds of references can feel really cringy, but I love the way they functioned in Christine's book. I think that element was great. Her writing is seriously so funny. Like, I know Christine is funny, but I did not expect this book to be so funny, and I love that part about it. Overall, I think it's just a really, really nice, I think it's a really good young adult, contemporary with a twist type romance, you know, finding yourself, and I think it's set at a good age. The college age is a really good time to explore, and I think that a lot of young adult books don't really do that a lot of young adult books don't really do a good job of exploring that age without turning their story into like smut. And like, even though there is technically like a sex scene in this book, it's handled so well and like mature. That's another thing that I loved, is that when Shane comes back the second time around to London, she's so much more mature in like her thought process, and at the same time she's not at all, which I think is like really realistic, because, you know, she's lived more, she's more mature, her writing is more mature, but she also is like still making a shit ton of mistakes, and I think that that's really realistic, and it worked really well for me. But yeah, so overall, a really good read, like a solid 3.5, 4 stars. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. I think I need to take a couple hours to decide my final rating, but I really, really enjoyed it. Alright, so I am back to discuss my final thoughts on Again But Better by Christine Riccio, or Riccio. I just realized that I have been saying her whole ass name completely wrong for basically the entire time that I've been watching her, and I am not sure how that happened, because I feel like I've been watching her for so long that I feel like, how could it be possible for me to have been mispronouncing her name this whole time? I've always said Riccio, but I just watched a video from Jesse the Reader where he says Riccio, and so clearly I've been in the wrong. Anyways, some of my final thoughts on Again But Better. It's been a couple days since I finished it up. I just wanted to come back with like a final rating and like my positives, negatives. Just to give you a little bit of background, I am not a huge contemporary reader. I have read some that I have loved. Carry On by Rainbow Rowell is one of my favorite books of all time, but it's not something that I'll reach for all the time. So reading this book was an interesting experience for me. One of my favorite things about this book was the integrating of some magical realism. I believe that's what you would call it, magical realism for sure. the way that the characters interacted with that reality was definitely super interesting. It was realistic. I thought it was a unique and like fresh kind of take on how you often see characters interacting with discovering a magical realism like element within their own lives, and I thought that it was done really well. Some of my other favorite things about this book are Christine's writing. Like I've been saying this whole time, that was thoroughly enjoyable the entire time, and it makes it clear to me that even though this might not have been like my favorite book of 2019 or like the best book that she'll write, she definitely has a talent, and I cannot wait to read more of her books and to like watch her grow as an author, because I think that there is so much potential there. This being a travel abroad, study abroad type book, I really enjoyed the travel scenes, the way that they were described. They weren't it wasn't like too cliche or too, you know, like here are the basics, but it didn't go so far in depth that you got kind of bored with like the traveling aspect of it. It really conveyed a love for the places that she saw and the things that she was doing without being too much, if that makes sense. Something that people have been mentioning about this book that they maybe don't like as much is that the characters and the experiences and such are pretty clearly modeled after Christine's own life. And first of all, it didn't detract for me from the book, because I still found it enjoyable and quirky and fresh, and I didn't think that it was something that pulled away from the merit of this book as a whole for me. I can understand why it might be annoying to people, and then again, early writers tend to do that. I've found myself doing it in fiction writing workshops, and it's just something that kind of naturally happens. But somebody who doesn't know Christine would pick this book up and not have any idea that these elements were related to her life. Like the French Watermelon 19 or 21, I can't remember. that wouldn't have any ring of familiarity to anybody who didn't know her channel. And I think that that's kind of cool, because it almost lets her watchers in on a little bit of a different side to this book, and I actually ended up appreciating that element more than I disliked it. As for the relationship, I thought it was adorable. I was very frustrated with Pilot at times, but overall, I did not think that the way that the relationship developed was particularly offensive. I know a couple people have spoken about some of the ways that it develops and how it might be less than ethical, but it's realistic and it's down to earth and it gets into the nitty-gritty of how things happen, and I was here for it personally. The only thing that I did have a problem with is that at one point we find Amy reading Christine's journal, and I felt like that got a little bit into villainization territory, because for the most part I didn't have a problem with this trope because Amy wasn't villainized, so it was less of girl competing with girl and more about Shane and Pilot's relationship. But when Amy read her journal and kind of said something nasty about it, that kind of got into the territory of like victimizing Shane and villainizing Amy, and that's more of a competitive relationship, and I didn't like that. I thought that could have been left out. It really never came to fruition or anything with anything important in the plot, so I really didn't think that was necessary. That's probably the one thing that I would say made me a little bit uncomfortable. But overall, I really did not mind it, and I found Shane and Pilot's relationship very real and very relatable, and I really liked it. Probably my biggest critique of this book is that everything wrapped up a little bit too nicely. I think that we could have used an extra like 50 pages or something, delving more into the parental relationship between Shane and her parents. We could have heard more about Leo, who became such an interesting character at the end. I hated him all the way throughout the book, and I was like, why are we talking about this kid? And then all of a sudden he became somebody who was kind of important to Shane. And I think that whole like going a few years into the future and like showing how nicely everything wrapped up was just a little bit idealistic and a little bit unrealistic, and I would have liked to see more about the journey between you know, Shane's parents realizing that she's not following in the footsteps that they want her to, and them coming to a place where they can be where they can be cordial and more loving again. This book definitely is not perfect, but overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a good time reading it. You can get into the plot kind of right away. It's not a super slow starter. I think the biggest thing is that I went into this book with zero expectations. I give this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited for what Christine comes out with next. Thank you for watching, for making it to the end. Hopefully, I plan on making a few more videos this summer. I love BookTube, have always loved BookTube. Have tried to get into it before, but I'm a really busy person, so it just never has worked out. But perhaps this summer will be the summer. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you soon. Bye!